So this is going to be chapter 17, part 2. This one's going to be pretty short. This is not going to be a long video. I won't make you guys suffer too much. But to begin this video, we are left at the point where she is writing Rachel, which she considered an aunt because she had been in her life forever, and that she was going to be her power of attorney when her mother passed, yet her mother wasn't even her power of attorney. Gypsy, in all her medical records and everything, it is stated that she was her own power of attorney. Yes, Gypsy received a check for being disabled, but it was more or less because of her physical disabilities, not mental disabilities, that she was found competent enough to be able to sign legal documentation. So when she wrote her aunt, she had confessed to murdering her mother. And if you haven't seen that letter, I have a video. It's one of my older videos, one of the first videos I've ever posted. But this upsets Gypsy because she doesn't see where she had confessed to anything, that she was not guilty. But in that letter, guys, she is complaining about how Nick and her have the same sentencing, like both of them are getting charged with first-degree murder, and she felt like this was disgusting to her, that he's the one that did it. Like, how dare they group her in with a first-degree murder? And that letter really tells her character. So if you haven't read it or seen it, I would highly recommend that you do. And it's available for anyone to see because it was part of evidence in the case. She goes in and says that she had contacted her dad and Mike and told them about what was going on, and that they had both offered her help, and she just couldn't trust them because she could never trust her mother. She goes into detail about how Mike was asking her questions, and she felt like he was kind of intruding and questioning her, not believing her. A lot of narcissists do this. They're upset if you question anything that they do. She tells us about how she had formed a friendship with an inmate and how she would tell or express to that inmate exactly what happened with the crime and how she felt about it and everything else. And then that inmate goes to her public defender and tells him everything to try to get a reduced sentence. Which, good for that inmate, because you deserve to have the truth out there in the open. All these lies that you tell, this victim story that you try to make out to have everyone believe, I'm glad that inmate did turn on you. You deserved it. And that this had totally caused her to not be able to trust anybody, because if she can't confide with one person, she can't confide with anybody. It's just ruined her whole perception on reality. And then she tells us about how she loves Nick, even though she's told us multiple times now in this book that she didn't love Nick, that she jumped in the relationship with him because she didn't want to be alone. So there's a lot of going back and forth, I guess, because she doesn't want to have everybody on her ass about saying that she hates or dislikes someone that she manipulated to do this horrible crime. Narcissist, much. Once again, she's bringing up her addiction to meds and says that she was having dreams of her, Mike, Christy, and Rod in the house going through her mother's hoarding addictions, and that Mike grabs her mother's baby pillow and it's just covered in blood. And she tells us about how she told a lot of inmates about how much she misses her mother and how they would just look at her in just bewilderment. But girl, do you understand why they would? She tells us about how Mike told her that she shouldn't be talking to any other inmates until she has her trial, which is something that most attorneys will tell their clients, and how she had turned to God because of this, and how she would plead to God, and it was more like begging, God, please, why did this happen to me? Then she basically tells us again about how in court she heard the details of Nick unaliving her mother and how gruesome and brutal it was, and how he had chopped her up. Girl, you're the one that brought up the knife. I mean, what did you think was gonna happen? I'm just baffled because everything is just I'm a victim. I had no place in this, guys. I didn't ask him to cut her up like that. It's not how he did it, Gypsy. He did it and you asked him to do it. Do you understand that? At the end of the day, your mother was still unalived. Why do you keep bringing this up? Do you bring this up in the book because of how people reacted to those crime scene photos? And don't you act like you didn't see her body and see what happened to her, because you went back in that house. You didn't mention it in the book, but you went back in that house. You went to your mother. You told her that you were sorry, and you covered her body. Don't act like you didn't see what happened. In fact, I do believe that you had a little bit more to do with it, because if you're just leaving out these details because you know how bad they are, just imagine what else you're leaving out. The funniest thing about this chapter, she says that she finds out, or she realizes her mother's Munchausen by proxy, and that her dad was never a deadbeat. What? It's okay that he made mistakes, and it's okay that, everyone makes mistakes. No one's a perfect parent. But to keep making excuses for him and blame it on your mother, where's his accountability? Does he not take accountability for anything? Then she tells us about how when she's off of the unalive watch, that her tube is finally removed, and she said that her mother told her that if she didn't have her tube, or if she had her tube removed, that she would pass away. However, in your text messages, Gypsy, you're talking about having your tube removed to have a baby and stuff, and that you chose to have your tube replaced. You knew that you wouldn't have passed away without it, because you even stated that you didn't use the tube for food, that you used it for medicine, that you literally used it for medicine only. So why would you have passed away without it? Can you answer that question? Or is that just another lie that you want to put in the story to dramatize things even further? And even a doctor, before you have that procedure, will tell you it's just a temporary thing until your body can absorb food naturally. But you said that you didn't use it for food, so once that medicine is not needed, then you wouldn't need the tube, and they would tell you that. Then she tells us that Mike told her since she's gained 10 pounds from being in prison that this was a sign that she was malnourished. But Gypsy, like literally everybody that I know that's been in prison or jail has gained weight from being in prison or jail. I don't really know much of anyone that hasn't gained weight. And you were a healthy weight when you were put in prison. We've seen your videos and stuff. You definitely wasn't the stick thin figure that you're trying to make yourself out to be. Because you did have a chest, you did have breasts. When someone is malnourished, the fatty tissue on their chest goes away too. Because your body will eat fat first. She tells us that she didn't know that her hair was brown yet in her arrest mugshot. Gypsy, you had hair. You had hair. You weren't bald. But she leaves this chapter with saying that she got great news that her and Nick were not going to get the death sentence, and that she's actually going to be charged with second-degree murder, and that she's going to get a plea of 10 years. But, wow, how unfair.